I want to welcome you to the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. We are so excited to be back in person, but there are folks who couldn't make it, and they are probably watching online, and we want to say thank you and welcome to all those folks who are watching as well. We have a pack-filled program for you today, an exciting program. I always say that when we do this event, I heard that a pastor say this before, is that when you hear kids talking, that means the world is good. So that means the world is good. But we do have a pack-filled program for you today, so want to get right to it. Again, just want to welcome you to this event and tell you a little bit about the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. The prize really honors high school students who have demonstrated notable work in race relations. And every year we honor, I think there are 28 different regions, and so we honor students from around the country in this endeavor. And for those of you who are doing this, you know that the work that you do is really making a big difference in the world. It's making a difference in your community, but it's absolutely making a big difference in the world. It was established in the fall of 2003. Founder Henry von Cohorn, a class of '66, recognized the need to support and encourage young high school students committed to fostering positive race relations within their communities. Henry's vision was founded on the notion that early encouragement, reward, and support for these students would motivate them to continue this critical work in college and beyond. And further, that these students would create a virtuous cycle that would continue to foster positive race relations well beyond the scope of their initial projects. When we talk about that mission again, it's so important, and race conflict is perhaps the most critical domestic issue that this country faces. So the fact that you decide to tackle it is commendable, and I just want to give you a round of applause. With that, this is the first in-person event since 2019, and that means that we had virtual ceremonies for our 2021 winner and our 2022 winner. And it so happens that they decided to join us today. So we're gonna, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to give them a moment to talk about their particular projects and for you to get to know them a little bit as well. During her senior year, Samantha Taylor has been the president of the Black Student Union and co-president of Peer Multicultural Educators at Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy. She is here today as a student at the University of Chicago. As the president of these organizations, she led conversations in town hall on topics ranging from colorism to police brutality to what racism looks like in higher education. As co-president of Peer Multicultural Educators, she founded Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy's first annual diversity conference. Chasing equity, where students from around the country, were invited to learn about how they can make their campuses more equitable. She has also worked alongside the Great Lakes Equity Center to collect and analyze institutional data and, institutional data and equity policies to make her campus more inclusive. She is here today to talk a little bit about her project, and please welcome to the podium Samantha Taylor.
Kind of stole like 1/3 of my speech right there, but it's okay. Good evening, everyone. I would first like to thank the Princeton Club of Chicago for extending me an invitation to speak at this year's ceremony as the 2021 recipient, and as a lot of the recipients up until 2019. COVID truly robbed us of the opportunity to attend any of the in-person ceremonies, so I'm incredibly grateful to be with you all here today. My name is Samantha Taylor, and I was a 2021 recipient of the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. I'm currently a sophomore at the University of Chicago studying public policy and philosophy on the pre-law track, and a not-so-recent graduate of Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, where I undertook many leadership roles centered around diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I first went to my high school, Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, it was a boarding school, and it pulled from students from all across the state, which had had numerous backgrounds and experiences and interactions with people in different cultures, religions, and etc. And one of the biggest challenges there was trying to get us all to live together and coexist together and trying to figure out what it was like to foster an academic environment that had students from all across the state. And one of the big issues with that was trying to understand the issue of race. And unfortunately, one of the biggest things that catalyzed my social justice work on my campus was the incident of a hate crime. A hate crime where a black doll was emulated on a board that kind of resembled a lynching. And because of that, caused a lot of community outrage that spoke to the administration's failure to properly address those issues, but also pushed the students to step up to the plate. Meanwhile, this was also around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we were all really encouraged to take action on these issues on campus. So as a result, as the president of numerous student organizations on campus, as Black Student Union, as well as peer multicultural educators, organized a series of town halls that encourage students to, one, talk with administration and encourage community members to address the topic of race at our school and have larger discussions about what race looks like in higher education, but also fostering an environment that encouraged students to get involved with local government. When you see an issue and you're young, it's not much you can do when you can't vote. So I really wanted to encourage students and youth in general to use their voices to create communities that they felt proud of. And so some of my favorite accomplishments, where I really was an activist, and I still am in many ways, was really being passionate about the work of social equity and advocacy, and working to create a future that is representative and inclusive of everyone. At the time, in high school, some of my favorite accomplishments included creating my own publication called Black Box that celebrated and shared Black culture and about the Black experience. I was really into poetry, and I still am, and creating that platform really was used to create a space for Black youth to talk about their feelings about the Black experience in a way that was through a medium of expression that they felt comfortable with. And having a feature segment on NBC News as a young activist, spending Tuesday afternoons teaching public policy and activism to ninth graders, and speaking alongside Dr. Angela Davis in a fireside chat. And today, as a student at the University of Chicago, my passion for social impact has not slowed down. In fact, being at the University of Chicago, a very predominantly white institution, as many of the Princeton alumni here would know, there's a lot of pushback when it comes to community organizing, especially when it comes to race relations. However, I'm currently a political chair for the Organization of Black Students, and during my time there thus far, I was able to lead a meet and greet with Colin Kaepernick and Dr. Eve Ewing on their new book, Colin Kaepernick Changed the Game, this past March for Black student leaders on campus. And I'm currently leading the coordination of the University of Chicago's annual George E. Kent Lecture with the Harris School of Public Policy, where I secured Kevin Richardson from the Central Park Five to talk with UChicago and Chicago's Southside community about his Emmy-winning Netflix series, When They See Us, as well as the racial implications of the American criminal justice system. Along the way, I have had the opportunity to intern at New York University's Law School Policing Project, and I am an incoming criminal investigative intern for DC's Public Defender Office. Throughout my journey, I've realized that any social justice work, especially racial justice, is a thankless job, and it can go beyond being emotionally tolling. Yet the Princeton Prize, in more ways than one, encouraged me to continue to do this necessary work. And to this year's winners, I want you to know that the Princeton Prize is an incredible accomplishment. What you have accomplished and what you have fought for at such a young age is a testament to both your character and your potential to make a genuine impact on this world. I encourage you to keep that fire in you to make the world a better place, and as you graduate high school and go on to college, you will see the world open up in so many new ways. It's important for you to remember who you are and what exactly you stand for. Additionally, make connections within your cohort. You have been given the opportunity to be in a network of tomorrow's leaders, students like you who are driven by the hope of a better future and have begun taking the action to make that happen. It is a privilege that I hope you all take advantage of. Congratulations to 2023's winners of the Princeton Prize. I and everyone else in this room is really excited to see what you'll accomplish. Thank you.
So I was going to ask her to, since she was into poetry, could she just come up with a couple of rhymes for us right here? A couple, just do a little something. But I know we have time, so we're on a time schedule. So I won't put you on the spot. All right, we know you can do it. We're looking forward to what you can accomplish. Come on. With that, I'd like to now bring to the stage, and I won't even say as much as I said before, because Samantha says, oh, I took part of her speech. Okay, so we have Kashyap Rajesh. He is the 2022 winner, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Welcome to the stage, Kashyap.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reggie, for that wonderful introduction. And first off, thank you so much to the Princeton Club of Chicago for this opportunity to celebrate, leaders in racial equity, and specifically, a huge congratulations to this year's winners. Hi, everyone. My name is Kashyap Rajesh, and I'm a junior at Adlai E. Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, Illinois. And, first off, I'd like to take this opportunity to sincerely and thank the Princeton Club of Chicago, and more importantly, the leaders who have won today's prize. Your work in change-making within this community and tackling some of our most pressing issues is truly commendable. Congratulations. The Princeton Prize in Race Relations is an incredibly enriching experience, one that enabled me to tap into a wide network of leaders and activists across the community and country who all shared an unwavering commitment to alleviating racial inequities in their respective regions. The experience pushed me to continue serving my local community and collaborating with other winners to explore ways in which we can create a future that celebrates diversity and supports racial equity. Alongside my fellow winners from the 2022 cohort, together we launched the Youth DEI Collaborative, an international organization that works to uplift and elevate DEI projects. This goes to show the power of the Princeton Prize in Race Relations much beyond the ceremony itself. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to share a little bit more about my work for my project for the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. I currently serve as the Global Chapter Coordinator at ENCODE Justice, an international coalition mobilizing youth for creating a future in which technology and algorithms respect human rights and democracy. As a chapter coordinator, I aid political advocacy efforts that have taken me to Capitol Hill to lobby congressional offices in person. I work with chapters in 40+ US states and 40 countries, ensuring that each chapter is working to tackle region-specific issues in order to advance social equity and promote the accuracy of technology towards minority constituents through community organizing, political advocacy, education. Here are 3 examples of how my advocacy, education, and activism work have actually bettered my community. Today, 33% of African American females are falsely identified by biometric identification systems. To counter this, over the last year, I've conducted legislative lobbying sessions with 60 lawmakers to pass the Facial Recognition and Biometric Technology Moratorium Act and Deepfakes Task Force Act. Our legislative advocacy has yielded the passage of 3+ local ordinances to prevent false minority incarcerations. 3 ordinances. The opportunity to have meetings with 600 fellows internationally as part of our chapter cohort and forge 25 organizational partnerships with the ACLU, Algorithmic Justice League, Fight for the Future, has yielded significant awareness and education within the tech equity movement. I've maintained relationships with members of the White House Executive Branch for Equitable Technology federally. Just recently, my collaboration with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy yielded the creation of the AI Bill of Rights, which sets a framework for the way in which technology should operate ethically in the United States, which specifically highlighted the government's response to promoting tech systems that are fair for marginalized communities. But my work didn't stop at the Princeton Prize. Just last week, I recently utilized the grant money from the Princeton Prize, coupled with other donations from investment firms, to organize and lead a week-long tech policy summit at the heart of Silicon Valley. Throughout the experience in San Francisco last week, we met with leaders from LinkedIn, Meta, Google, and OpenAI to discuss their corporations' efforts to enhance their technology that works for all, including racial minorities. We met with leaders from the Greenlining Institute and California Department of Justice to discuss how we can implement safe, fair, and ethical tech systems in law enforcement that don't disproportionately discriminate against people of color. The experience even landed us an opportunity to testify at a legislative hearing in California State Legislature where we opposed a bill that would enable police departments sweeping authority to use facial recognition technology. This transformative experience allowed me to gain more experience not only in change making, but to better understand the large role that large tech companies play in driving AI ethics policy. And with that, I'd like to leave you all with one thing. We can. Together we've done, and together we will continue to do. Thank you all for your time.
So that was the 2021 and the 2022 winners. Let's give them another round of applause. With that, we can actually get into this year's. And the first person that I want to bring up, so what we're going to do here is that we're going to recognize, we had so many great applications. So every year, we only get one winner. But that doesn't mean that there's only one winner, because we actually are the recipients of this phenomenal work that these young people are doing. So we're going to recognize 3 of them today, and then we'll also look at our winner for the year. The first person I'd like to bring up is Nora Sun. And I even hesitate again to make this great introduction, right? Because then Nora will come up and say, you said everything that I'm supposed to say, but I have to say something, just a little something about Nora. So a high school senior at Walter Payton College Prep, and is very passionate about tackling complex problems at the intersection of science and society. She is dedicated to increasing cognitive diversity in scientific research through initiatives such as Talaria, I hope I said that correctly, Summer Institute, which is a prestigious international scientific research program for female high school students, which has collaborated with institutions such as MIT, Yale, Nassau, NIH, University of Toronto, and the University of Edinburgh. With that, I'm going to leave all the rest of her bio and all the other great things that she has to say for her. So please welcome to the stage Nora Sun.
First off, I'd just like to say thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and good evening, everyone. As he mentioned, I'm a senior at Walter Payton College Prep, and I am one of this year's certificate recipients. I am the founder and program director of Talaria Summer Institute, which is a scientific research program for high school students from underrepresented backgrounds. And I first founded this program 4 years ago when I was 14 years old and a freshman in high school. I became interested in this topic, specifically in how racial inequity impacts the ability of diverse perspectives to contribute to the scientific community, when I moved from a small Illinois suburb called Champaign, Illinois, to Chicago to attend high school. And I go to a selective enrollment high school called Walter Payton College Prep, which means that we bring in people from all around the city based on their academic potential to study. So I was suddenly surrounded by the wealth of scientific opportunities that is available in Chicago, such as all the large universities we have here. However, I soon realized that all of these opportunities were not equally accessible to everybody. For example, I witnessed a number of racially motivated microaggressions and bullying, and I noticed that consequentially, fewer students of color enrolled in higher level science classes that I was taking, despite showing equal passion and aptitude in earlier classes. Additionally, significantly fewer students of color were able to participate in various extracurricular opportunities that Chicago offered, due to the location of the program in the city or due to the price of these programs. So I designed Tularia Summer Institute as well as Athena by Women in STEM, which is another initiative which addresses the obstacles uniquely or disproportionately impacting underrepresented students pursuing science. This may include, but is not limited to, lack of available opportunities, lack of communities, lack of mentors, and lack of role models. By introducing more diverse perspectives into science through Tularia and through my other initiatives, I hope to further scientific discovery and the wealth of diversity from which we draw from to advance science. So today I primarily want to speak about my work with Tularia Summer Institute and how the program works. So basically we have this admissions committee of alumni and mentors that selects a number of applicants each year to participate in the program based on the lack of access to science opportunities, as well as their demonstrated passion for science. As a Tularia mentee during the free month-long program, the students are trained in academic research methods and complete a research project under one-on-one mentorship of an academic researcher, which is typically a professor but can also be a postdoc or a graduate student. And this person will specialize in the scientific area that the student is passionate about. So our program tackles the specific issues that students of color face in pursuing science in a number of ways. One example is that a large portion of our students identify as underrepresented student in science. 22% identify as African American and 28.8% identify as Latino. And according to many different sources, these students have been historically barred from certain opportunities such as AP STEM courses. For example, one of our mentees stated that in these courses she experienced racial discrimination that resulted in pressure and imposter syndrome. However, Tularia was not only able to provide hands-on research training for her, but also provided a comforting and welcoming environment where she could freely pursue her passion for science. In addition to systematic racism, students of color also tend to face lack of educational resources. For example, within our population of Tularia mentees, some live within a majority world country, some live within an under-resourced area where high-level science opportunities are non-existent, and some have a household income below $40,000 USD. So by designing free virtual and in-person tracks, Tularia enables these students to participate in a high-level scientific opportunity. For example, this year we were able to bring in a student from a low-income background from Puerto Rico to do research with NASA to develop her interest in engineering. Finally, we have been measuring the impact of Tularia Summer Institute through a rating system, where at the beginning of the program, students rate some statements from 1 to 10, and then we compare that to their final survey where they once again rate the same statements. Last year, Tularia mentees reported a 65% increase in understanding of scientific research methodology and a 91% increase in knowledge in their area of interest. As aspiring scientists, Tularia mentees, after graduating, can continue to bring unique questions and unique ideas to the research community. And our plans for the future are to develop a residential program to provide greater immersion in the sciences, which is a project that we're currently collaborating with the University Simon Fraser in Canada for, and also to be able to develop a pathway for students to actually implement the results of their research within their local communities. So finally, I would like to thank the Princeton Prize for this opportunity to share my work with all of you, as well as all my mentors and volunteers, and most importantly to all the inspiring female scientists who have taken part in my initiatives. Thank you.
So Nora has to leave because Nora has another scholarship opportunity she has to be at. And because Marquise is my friend, he always brings his camera. That means, that means we get to do this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nora. It's amazing how, again, the work doesn't just stop. The things that they're doing just continues to go on and on and on. And I know the reason that most of you guys are here because you know that. And at that point, I'd actually like to say thank you to everybody who was on the committee. We'll talk about that a little later, but just say thank you to everybody who was on the committee again. At this time, Mary, are you here? Yes, Mary. I'd like to bring up Mary Appleton to introduce our next certificate honoree.
You know, you think you have things ready and then they shut down and go on a different screen by the time you're actually ready. My name is Mary Applington. It's my joy and pleasure to be inspired and led and accompanied by Anusha Nadkarni. Anusha is a student at Bloomington High School. It's my privilege to mentor high school students who are engaged in the pursuit of equity and justice. Anusha is one of our leaders. I could go on and talk about a lot of the things she's done, but I have 2 minutes. So instead of that, I'd like to introduce you to Anusha by telling a story. This story is typical of who Anusha is, what's important to her, and what she does. Last year sometime, got a phone call from Anusha. She was very concerned about something that was happening at her school. She discovered that the dance team had a costume that reflected cultural appropriation. Their costume, as well as their music, was culturally appropriating. Anusha's response was the following. She made an appointment, actually I think it was the same day, to meet with the school principal. She also met with the athletic director. She set out her concerns, spent some time after that conversation in thinking about options and what could happen to do this. This dance team was going to present in a state competition within 2 weeks' time, so she didn't have much time at all to address the problem. She proposed this solution that was followed by the school. First, inform and educate the team and the team coach about her concern and what that meant. Second, to seek some written input from a member of that culture. The person's writing would be shared at the competition, as all of those who attended the competition would then understand that the school knew that they had done something that was not acceptable and that they committed not to do that in the future. She then secured the engagement of a local racial justice trainer to meet with the school administrators and the people who were involved in that, and then some other people also, I believe, but I'm not sure of all of them. And they then participated in training in all of these concepts and actions and the harm that they could cause. Anusha then coordinated all of this and followed up to ensure that all these steps were taken, and it was all successfully done. So this is Anusha, who ensured that peace was part of what came out of this. This met everybody's needs in some way or other. People learned from this, and people moved forward with a better understanding of what it means to work together in pursuit of justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for the kind words and for being the perfect role model for what it means to serve a community. I've known Mary forever, and I cannot imagine myself being here without her. As was said, my name is Anusha. I'm a senior at Bloomington High School, about 2 hours south of Chicago. Before I start, thank you to the Princeton Club of Chicago, everyone who has worked on and is working this event. and all of you for being here, not only to celebrate all of these amazing youth, but also to appreciate all the ways in which our world is growing and healing, though it doesn't always seem that way. Van Gogh has a quote, which I love, and it goes, "If I'm worth anything now," I messed up one more time. "If I'm worth anything later, I'm worth something now. For wheat is wheat, even if people think it is a grass in the beginning." I'd like to ask you to think about this quote as I tell the story that catalyzed my project. So Bloomington High School is a predominantly low-income school with predominantly students of color. And so as a junior in the drama program last year, I met many underclassmen who were looking for a place to belong. One of these was an underclassman who is named Michael, that's not his real name, but anonymity, right? And he was a caring friend, a skilled skateboarder, and he loves music. The upperclassmen have a running joke that we always see him wandering the hallways during class time, and share a common responsibility to check that he's going to class when we see him, which includes walking him to class when we know he's not supposed to be in the hallway. When we tell him to go to class, he does. During rehearsal, we help Michael catch up on his missing work, and we make deals with him. If you go to all of your classes on time tomorrow and stay there, we'll bring you a donut at rehearsal tonight. When Hall Sweep started, we made Michael promise to go to class because we knew that he was already struggling in his classes. For those of you who are not aware, Hall Sweeps are a new measure that a lot of public schools have started to catch students who are not in class when the bell rings and lock them out of the classroom in order to discipline them. It's upsetting. His grades and tardy record are less than ideal, but there is one class that he goes to regularly. The class taught by our drama director. She says that he's always on time, follows the rules of the class, and is a pleasure to have as a student. She makes him feel comfortable, and he feels accepted in her class. Without the network of peer support he received, Michael's experience at VHS might have been different. The community built around him by the drama club and the resulting relationship formed between him and the drama director enabled him to be the model student that he struggles to be in his other classes. Michael has told me that he feels like his teachers don't like him, and that's why he doesn't go to class. He tries to find other arrangements where he can work in the hallway as a result. He is a regular recipient of disciplinary actions due to his grades or behavior in other classes, but nothing has been able to change his actions in any capacity other than feeling accepted by his teacher and having supportive influences in his life. 32% of students who receive detentions become repeat offenders, and students of color are 2.6 times as likely to be suspended as white students, with greater disparities in incarceration as well. Michael is a student of color, and what we don't tell him when we tell him to go to class is that we want to see him in class so that we don't see him suspended or becoming another one of our students who falls down the school-to-prison pipeline. The majority of students at my high school are people of color, and while the diversity of our student body is an inspiring reflection of numerous communities, it becomes a liability when disciplinary structures are not equitably established. Not every student at my school has people who value them so greatly that they beg them to go to class, or have even one teacher who cares as deeply as Michael's does. The feeling of belonging in a school community has been a powerful tool for Michael to stay engaged in his education. So for this reason, I started something called the Resilience Project, based on the name of a study done by 2 educators on building resilience in public schools through restorative practices. Restorative practices give students the opportunity to build relationships with their teachers and school communities, something Michael was able to do with the drama club. So through this program, I helped train a bunch of educators and students in my community, specifically at Bloomington High School, in how to facilitate listening circles to solve problems and also deliver class content in listening circles. The point of restorative practices is to build community and repair harm without punitive measures like detention or suspension. So our goal is to empower students of color to have a voice and be listened to instead of punishing them without asking why they might be acting out. Like Michael, I wanted this restorative outreach program to show students what being wheat is like, what being treated like you matter is like. My project was created to bridge the gap in discipline for students of color at my school and show them that their identity is not a liability. We are creating a community where we don't throw students of color away because we think they are grass. But it's not just the relationships that we build with each other that teaches our youth that they're wheat. It is also the relationship we teach them to build with themselves. If you see yourself as grass, you will think you're grass. But what if you see yourself as a warrior, an intellectual, a professional, a poet, wheat? How do we represent our students of color in the classroom? So another part of this project was advocating for inclusive curriculum and pedagogy, as well as community events that represented our diverse community. In school, I worked with my English department and history department to implement curriculum that not only represents students, but shows them as warriors. One of these is the 1974 Zhengsai strike in San Francisco, where Chinese women led a strike that extended the labor movement into the 21st century. Another one was a lesson plan in my English class where we talked about indigenous poetry and what it means to be indigenous in a community that forces indigenous people out. And then in town, we organized a cultural arts night where we got a bunch of different artists from a bunch of different cultures and showed our students of color that they can be artists and that their art can come from home and not from the places that we teach them to draw inspiration from. Education is a mirror, and that mirror must show our students of color that they can be anything. Finally, I would like to leave you with this. Action is the great equalizer. Through restorative conversations and education that shows students everything they can be, and events that pull us all together, we can learn to make things wheat. The amazing work the other students in this room are doing can make things wheat. We are all worth something now, even if we, too, think we are grass in the beginning. Thank you.
We'll do a photo op too. Let's see here. That's it, we'll do a photo op. Of course, yours will be the one I can't find. Here we go. And your real certificate will come in the mail. Okay, so, yeah. All righty, and then there is Rafi. And Rafi, I am going to read a little something, and you are not going to come up here and say anything that Samantha said, even if I do it. Samantha, you crush me. So, Rafi is a junior at Walter Payton College Preparatory High School. We had somebody from that already, right? Yeah. He is the founder of Operation, you know what? I do need my glasses. Where are my glasses? See? Much better. Operation Veritas. And it's a climate justice initiative founded in 2022 in conjunction with pursuing Eagle Scout designation. I found it really interesting how you turned your scouting into something for racial justice. And with that, I'm just going to leave it at that and have you come on up, and if you guys could welcome Rafi to the podium.
Thank you for that introduction. As mentioned earlier, I am the founder of Operation Veritas, a climate justice initiative for Chicago and eventually urban America at large. While we don't have a website on the screen today, I encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about climate justice and how it can be achieved to visit operationveritas.org. I think that it is helpful to begin with a definition of climate justice. Climate justice is a form of social justice and begins with an acknowledgement that the effects of climate change are not equally or randomly distributed across society. Now, the fact that the effects of climate change are unequally distributed is not a social justice issue in and of itself. Many things in society are unequally distributed. What makes this a social justice issue is the fact that the people who are affected the most by climate change are precisely the people who contribute the least to climate change. Let me say that again. The people who have suffered the most from climate change are the ones who have done the least to cause the problem. That is because the poorer elements of society tend to have the smallest carbon footprint, not by choice, but because their lifestyles are dictated by their economic circumstances. They don't have huge houses with large heating and cooling costs. They don't have 3 cars. They don't fly thousands of miles every year for vacations, etc. This divide is true on a global scale, with the poorer global south expected to suffer the most from climate change. But it is also true on a local basis, with the poorer citizens of urban America, who are disproportionately black and brown, expected to face the brunt of the effects from climate change. Now let's pivot to how large of a problem this could be and how race factors so much into it. Those of you in the audience who are long-term Chicago residents may remember the Great Chicago Heatwave of 1995, a so-called 1-in-100-year event that killed 700 people in over the course of a week. The 2 most important things to note are, 1, the scale of the problem. By mid-century, a similarly intense heat wave is expected to occur every 5 years under low emissions and every other year under high emission circumstances. By the end of the century, this could be as often as 3 times a year. Imagine that. Going from 700 Chicagoans dying from extreme heat once every 100 years to over 2,000 Chicagoans dying every single year. The second thing to note is the distribution of the problem. Deaths from the 1995 Chicago heat wave had clear spatial variability, with the highest mortality rates in the poorer and disproportionately black and brown south and west sides of the city. A crucial point I illustrate in Operation Veritas is that the risk of extreme heat is not randomly distributed across Chicago, and that heat vulnerability correlates strongly with income and race, and furthermore, the Chicago's current racial segregation is largely due to the toxic legacy of redlining. While we don't have time for a detailed discussion of redlining, in short, it entrenched racial segregation, excluded minorities from wealth creation via home ownership, and starved their communities of the infrastructure investments that today make them vulnerable to extreme heat and flash flooding events. However, there is a way to minimize the danger from the coming storm. In OperationVeritas.org, I make the case for trees as a highly effective, cost-efficient, scalable, and climate-friendly approach to local cooling and flood mitigation. It is important to note that I am not advocating for more trees to mitigate climate change by sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere, even though that is definitely a worthy goal. But rather, I'm arguing for placing trees in areas where they can do the most good at the hyperlocal level, as an adaptation measured to help urban citizens live with the dangers they're increasingly going to face at a high level. At a high level, the shade from the trees significantly offsets the urban heat island effect, which is the biggest driver to extreme heat event deaths. And the roots from the tree absorbs and retains the significant moisture from excessive rainfall, and thus reduces the incidence and severity of urban flash flood events. Now, unsurprisingly, Chicago's current tree canopy is not evenly distributed, and gaps in coverage again correlate strongly to historically redlining. The city of Chicago provides trees to residents free of charge, but over the past decade, Chicago's trees have disproportionately gone to wealthier and whiter neighborhoods in the north and east of Chicago, even when they do not need them, with far fewer trees going to poor black and brown communities in the south and west of Chicago, where the tree need is much greater. Now, since trees are provided free of charge and on first-come, first-served basis, the planning shortfall in poor/minority neighborhoods suggests an information gap, a gap that Operation Veritas is well positioned to address with a systematic outreach effort to the specific communities that would benefit the most from increased tree cover. From its launch in fall 2022 through the present, Operation Veritas has already achieved promising results and is responsible for almost 250 tree plantings, despite the winter being a seasonably unfavorable time to drive awareness of the risk of extreme heat events in Chicago. The more impactful phase of the project will be in the summer through fall 2023 planning season, when I will launch a major door-to-door outreach effort to the most vulnerable areas of Chicago. If I can attract sufficient publicity and funding, for example by winning this accolade and others, Operation Veritas is primed to scale massively, especially since the supply of trees provided by the City of Chicago is both plentiful and free, allowing me to focus on driving awareness and conversion among at-risk communities. As such, Operation Veritas has the potential and the promise to be far more impactful than more conventional community service projects. My immediate goal is to increase the number of tree plantings enabled by Operation Veritas to 2,000 in the specific areas that need them the most, which would be a meaningful proportion of the 15,000 trees that the City of Chicago plants every year. In conclusion, I encourage anyone interested in this issue in particular, or climate justice in general, to visit operationveritas.org for further information, and where you can also find a link to order a tree free of charge from the City of Chicago. Thank you.
Let's get a photo op too. I'll take that. Thank you so much. And though that concludes our certificate winners, let's give all our certificate winners another round of applause. With that, we'd like to bring up, of course, glasses would be good. Sonia. We'd like to bring up Sonia to introduce our 2023 winner. And here we are.
Good evening, everyone. So it is with great honor and privilege that I'm introducing the Princeton Prize winner of Race Relation, Sherry Animation. Sherry is the founder of Her Rising Initiative, where she has consistently over the years created channels for young girls, minority girls, I would say, in Chicago, Nigeria, and beyond, to be inspired and guided into their future. Through Girl Who Lead, Sherry has connected over 200 middle school girls with STEM arts and law professionals to mentor and equip them into their future career plans. Something I want to highlight is that when she advertised the last event, she was featured, I believe it was either ABC Channel or ABC News, and this attracted a lot of, obviously popularity, and a lot of young girls enroll. And I was amazed to see how personally Sherry actually prepared for the event, coordinated it while studying for her SAT, her ACT, her exams, staying up late. This was extremely inspiring. So I'm truly inspired by your work. Sherry is a passionate and driven social advocate for change. In fact, she's the curriculum standard for school improvement student representative who advocated for African and African American history to be taught in classes. She passed the course Story of the African Diaspora, as well as 2 hate speech policy. Sherry exemplifies servant leadership at such a young age while maintaining high academic grade levels. I have no doubt that Sherry will become one of the key leaders in our nation to shift race relations for good. Finally, I also want to say that I personally know Sherry. She's an exemplary role model, not just to young girls, not just to young girls, also adults like myself, adults like her mom and her aunt who are here, people in her community and home, and her school and her church. Sherry, I have no doubt that there's nothing that's a limit for you. I'm so certain that the sky is the limit, and I'm telling you why. Because her heart has so much compassion for justice and for others, and I believe that those who have such heart make the greatest change in the world. So please welcome me, and please clap as I welcome our dear winner, Sherry Animation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shireen Mashan, and it is such an honor to be with all of you today. From the speeches alone, it's clear that I'm surrounded by generations of leaders, change makers, and pioneers. And before I go on about my initiatives, I must first begin by iterating how thankful I am for the people who are in here. From my family to my mentors, I am thankful for what this initiative is also doing. And I am proud of what we are doing in our collective spaces. From the certificate winners, the Princeton Club of Chicago, and the alumni and the families, there is really no better word than the word we. Individuals bonded into a community, one that is constantly overcoming. As a young Black woman of Nigerian heritage, I urge you all to reflect on your cultural identities, how your community has managed to overcome, and how your community has managed to secure moments of joy and peace amid sorrow and war. This community has managed to invent and reinvent cultures and subjects and objects again and again. And this community has managed to free itself again and again. And my community is still striving to overcome 400 years later. And while this award is recognizing the work that I've done in multiple communities, all of it ties back to my love and desire for community in the first place. In the state of Illinois, there are girls who want to start their own companies and organizations. 12-year-old girls who dream of being industrial engineers and 14-year-old girls who have never been able to become everything they have dreamed of. I've seen middle schoolers and I've seen elementary school girls who dream of becoming president. However, their ideas may never come to fruition because of the opportunities that they are not able to inherit or afford. And I know this reality far too well because I'm one of the many girls. This universal reality is why I founded my nonprofit, Her Rising Initiative, awarding scholarships and fundraising for women hit hardest by poverty, trafficking, and the pandemic was just the start. My main goal was to revive dreams. Inspired by the Seneca Falls Convention, I envisioned a conference that brought girls from all over the state together. Only this time we were not seeking rights, but resources. My idea grew into Girls Who Lead, an event flourishing with partners like the Hershey's Company and our local Rotary chapter. It was attuned to the needs of these girls. I emphasized mentorship, mental health, confidence, and career building. And in 2022, 200 girls signed up for workshops in engineering, culinary, screenwriting, photography, fashion, computer science, and law. And I tailored this event to fit the advice and the environment that I craved when I was younger. Beyonce's Run the World and Katy Perry's Roar echoed from speakers. The time between workshops was spent dancing, it was spent eating and playing. I sent proposals and invitations to women who fully mirrored the diverse role models that I longed to have. Black screenwriters and engineers, Latinx models with their own business, Asian women leading in government and school administration were just some of those among my beloved leaders. Young, aspiring lawyers got to hold hands with senators, and aspiring chefs got to work alongside top chef masters. And for the girls who did not know where they wanted to go, I made sure that they realized the infinite possibilities that were available to them. Now, directing Girls Who Lead was just as meaningful for me as it was for the 200 girls that attended. In each girl, I saw a piece of myself. I remembered the stacks of my written books and other ideas that never got farther than my living room. It took the eyes of amazing women to see my potential and to invest in it. Now, I invest in the community of girls here and worldwide in hopes of continuing the cycle and becoming a brighter generation. And while the disparities in the world are vast, and it's inspiring seeing all the other students tackling them as well, in my own school, I've seen my own share of barriers. Now, I'm a senior at Niles West High School, which is predominantly white, and we've had multiple problems and issues with hate speech. Seeing how that brought up barriers and prevented us from becoming a we, I wanted to make sure that there were more spaces so that the students didn't feel like it had to be them by themselves. I created panels, I created events, but I also created policies. In the March of last year, I brought evidence of underrepresentation of people of color in our curriculum, specifically African and African American history. After months of advocacy, after months of organizing, it was finally passed in November of 2022. Along with that, students came to me sharing their frustration after being called multiple slurs. In order to prevent this from happening to more freshmen and more students entering our school, I went straight to the problem. I I went to our administration and asked that they would pass something that also mirrored restorative justice practices. Now, to this day, thanks to the policy being passed, students who use that hateful language are not only penalized, they receive education and are able to learn from their mistakes. Now, hate speech will be taught in all Niles Township schools, and they will learn the origin of this language. They will learn why they shouldn't use it, and they will use better terms instead. Along with the hate speech policies being passed, we asked that there was a staff member or at least a faculty member that would be responsible for tracking the success of our Black and brown and underrepresented individuals in our school. And as of last week, we now have a new deputy superintendent who will be responsible for tracking the success and tracking the emotional and the academic outcomes of our Black and brown students in District 219. These policies will affect over 4,000 students for the years to come. Now the cash prize from this program will allow me to continue Girls Who Lead, and I look forward to joining other winners at Princeton University on April 27th. I look forward to all the opportunities to become we, the opportunities to bring people together. And before I leave this podium, I urge us all to challenge the barriers that stop us from becoming we, because we are stronger together. We are powerful, and we are making a difference. And I am grateful. Thank you.
You gotta make sure mom does a picture. Good. Oh, thank you. Now that's a girl who leads. So I'd like to thank all of you students again for the work that you're doing, and I'd like to ask everybody to give one big round of applause for everybody. I joined this committee some years ago at the behest or twisting of an arm by this guy named Marquise. And thanks a lot, Marquise. And he was like, look, this is a rewarding thing to do. And he is so right. I am so glad that he invited me to be a part of this initiative. And with that, Irene Burke is one of the people on our committee. And also on our committee is Brianna Payton. And those people who are on our committee, when we talk, they always say things like, oh man, this is the best thing to do. Oh, it's the greatest thing to do. And so with that, I am actually going to bring up Irene to introduce our keynote speaker. Irene. Sorry.
Thank you for that. I have the honor to introduce my friend and classmate, Brianna Payton, of the great class of 2017. Brianna was once in the shoes of our remarkable winners today, as she was awarded the Princeton Prize in Race Relations in high school and went on to do transformative racial justice organizing advocacy at Princeton, for which she was recognized with academic and service awards. In her career, she has advocated for major criminal justice reforms in Illinois and the investment of American Rescue Plan Act funds in community services rather than incarceration. Brianna is a senior policy analyst at the Chicago Appleseed Center for Fair Courts and was previously a policy coordinator for the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. In these positions, she has played an essential role in the campaign to pass, protect, and implement the pretrial fairness portions of the SAFETY Act, which makes Illinois the first state in the country to end money bond, a method of incarcerating people before trial based on their wealth. Her work today is inspired by organizing she did on Princeton's campus during the Black Lives Matter movement from 2014 to 2016, and fueled by her deep-seated passion for racial and social justice. I'm fortunate that Brianna was my classmate in both college at Princeton, where she earned her bachelor's in sociology, and graduate school at the University of Chicago, where she earned her master's in social service administration, as well as numerous honors and awards. I'm incredibly excited to continue to learn from her today as she shares lessons from her impactful work with the prize recipients. Please join me in welcoming Brianna.
Hey, how y'all doing? Good. That's good. I'm good. Thank you for asking. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Irene. You know what, y'all? Let me set a timer, because if not, we don't know how long this is going to last. Okay. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Irene. Irene and I had some fun memories at Princeton, pulling all-nighters, working on Spanish papers and the like, and it's fun to be able to transition from that season of life to doing this work on the Princeton Prize Committee now. It's also really cool that 10 years ago I was receiving one, and I gotta be honest, I was a certificate winner, all right? I didn't get the prize, but I was a certificate winner in 2013 when I graduated high school, and it's so cool 10 years later to be addressing the winners of the award. And people who are alumni of Princeton often talk to us more recent alum and say, you know, if I was applying to Princeton at the same time you were applying to Princeton, I don't know if I would have got in. And I kind of feel that way about the prize. Like, if I was applying for the prize when y'all were applying for the prize, I don't know if I would have got the prize. But that's not a bad thing, right? Because that is speaking to our collective progress, right? Like our prize winner was saying, it's not about I, it's about we. It's about how much can we step forward together. And so it's awesome to see that high school students are doing things that we never dreamed of doing when I was in high school, because it means that they're standing on the shoulders of those that came before them and taking the baton even further. So I'm really excited to address y'all today. And I just want to share a little bit of my story of getting to where I am and some lessons from my journey, though I know that you've clearly learned many of your own. I hope that you can gain some value from what I've learned as well. My talk is entitled, Plant Where You Bloom and Bloom Where You're Planted. So just a little bit about the garden that I came from. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and I have really fond memories of living in the inner city of Detroit. On my block, our neighbors were like family. I remember playing with my friends outside, you know, going on a Saturday morning, knocking on your friends' door and asking their parents if they can come outside and play. Everyone on our block knew each other, all the parents, all the kids, and being just nurtured by a really loving family of my own. And at the same time, there were also some limiting factors of my experience growing up in Detroit that I didn't necessarily notice as much at the time, but that became more apparent to me over time. Little things like the fact that my mom would tell me when I would go outside to play, don't go more than 5 houses down. I need you to be where I can see you. So when I was riding my bike, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I can't go past this point. This is my area, and I'm going to stay in here. And that was for my safety. I also realized in hindsight that, you know, it was an important factor of my life that I was in private school when I was in Detroit, because the public schools were something that you wanted to avoid if you wanted your child to get a quality education in many of the situations. And so my parents put me in private schools. Also, you know, when you would ride around, even though our community was filled with a lot of love, our community didn't always look very cared for. Lots of boarded up buildings, trash in the streets sometimes, things that made you feel like your space was neglected. Now, I didn't notice a lot of these things when I was in Detroit, but really I noticed them by contrast when my family moved out of the city of Detroit and into the suburb of Farmington Hills, Michigan. It's about 20 minutes outside the city, but it's literally like night and day, similar to when you go through different neighborhoods in Chicago, right? Segregation can do that. When I moved to Farmington Hills, it was like a whole different world. Instead of being around neighbors who felt like family and who all looked like me, I was around lots of people who didn't look like me and were essentially strangers. I had to go through the cycles or the processes of trying to first assimilate to a culture that wasn't mine, and then learning how to embody the truth of who I was. And I had to learn how to bloom where I was planted. Over time, I did, right? I did my best in school. I advanced into honors and AP classes. I joined the different clubs. I advanced into leadership. I played sports. I took advantage of the opportunities that were around me that were far more plentiful than what I had when I was in Detroit. The neighborhood was safer. Instead of going 5 houses down, I was allowed to walk 4 blocks to school at age 9 because it was literally Michigan's safest city. I didn't have to go to private school anymore. We were able to go to public school. My parents were able to pocket those thousands of dollars because what you had to pay thousands of dollars to get in Detroit, you could get for free in the public education system in Farmington Hills. And so on and so forth. The discrepancies, are myriad. Nonetheless, like I said, I was blooming where I was planted. I was taking advantage of what was around me, but I also was looking and seeing opportunities to plant where I was blooming. Farmington Hills and that community was not perfect, and I was noticing inequalities based on race in the community and the school that I was going through. In the advanced and honors classes that I was in, students who looked like me were incredibly underrepresented, and even in the regular classes, Black students and students of color were not performing at as high of a rate as their white counterparts. So I joined a group called Strike, Students That Rise to Increase Knowledge for Everyone, and we worked on providing after-school tutoring to minority students who might have been struggling in different elements of their academics. And we also created a professional development day set of trainings for the teachers to talk to them about what it looks like to provide culturally relevant and culturally competent lessons to a diverse community of students. I also spoke at district meetings with parents about the experience of being a minoritized student in Farmington Hills, and represented my school as a representative at our district-wide diversity conference, where we would bring students from the different district high schools to a convening where there was a keynote speaker and there were breakout sessions about racism, classism, stereotypes, bullying, and the like. And eventually I joined the committee that planned those annual conferences, and then we adapted the annual conference where only some representatives of schools went, and we adapted it to happen at our school so that all students could engage in that programming, and it became something that happened every trimester instead of once a year for a select few students. And it's my understanding that that has had a positive impact on my classmates. And so that experience and other things that I did in high school kind of seeded some of my passions for race relations and equality and inclusion and things of that nature. But it only went up a level when I went to Princeton. Because when I went to Princeton, I think that it's like I was given a pair of glasses to start understanding some of the inequalities that I grew up surrounded by from Detroit to Farmington Hills and beyond. I went to Princeton thinking that I was going to major in public policy and then go to law school, but instead I took sociology as a prerequisite course. And it was there that I started to learn more about social inequality, class inequality, institutional racism, how class differences are passed down through generations. And it just began to put into perspective some of the inequity that I saw from Detroit to Farmington Hills growing up. And it also started to challenge some of the narratives that I heard that never quite sat right with me when I was growing up. For example, narratives that people are poor just because they're lazy or don't work hard, or that Black people don't advance as far in our education because we don't value education in the same way. Growing up and hearing those types of narratives in the air never really sat right with me, but I didn't really have the tools in my arsenal to combat that. I just knew that doesn't seem right, especially being somebody that was from Detroit and saw how the opportunities were so different in different places. I'm like, this doesn't seem right, but I don't know what to say instead. And in my sociology classes, in my African American studies classes, in my American studies classes, I started getting some things to say instead. Like, let's talk about redlining and how that's contributed to housing segregation. Let's talk about, the inequitable distribution of funding for schools. Let's talk about the disproportionate impact of police brutality on Black and brown communities and the like. I just started getting language to understand the inequality around me, and it seeded a desire to challenge those systemic inequities in my future career. But I started with blooming at Princeton, right? I started with taking the classes that interested me, joining the clubs that interested me, from mock trial to the gospel choir to the Black student affinity groups. I was the project manager and eventually the vice president of the Black Student Union at Princeton, and I loved planning social events for Black students. I still love planning social events for people, from movie nights to game nights, karaoke, and the like. But also I planned different dialogue events for us to talk about our experiences as Black students at Princeton. And it was in those conversations that people's experiences with racism started to rise to the surface. Experiences like going out to what's called the street. Princeton alum know it's like the street where there's all these mansions where people party, right? going out to the street at night and being called racial slurs by drunk white students. Or, being racially profiled by public safety officers on campus, asking them for their ID because they perceive them as not belonging. Or being stereotyped by new friends, which I know I definitely experienced. I remember being on a service trip my freshman year, and having, through a series of events, this white guy on our trip, say something along the lines of, "Oh, if anything goes wrong, Bree will protect us," because she's from Detroit, so she look at her, she can scrap. Mind y'all, I've never been in a fight in my life, but even if I had, that was bogus. That was wild for him to say, because you don't know me, and you're making that assumption based on my skin without actually having a conversation with me. So all types of things were happening. I had a white guy classmate who told me that he was blacker than me because he listened to the Wu-Tang Clan and I didn't. Anybody here who went to Princeton knows, and anyone who's, navigated any predominantly white space as a person of color knows that you kind of that it runs the gamut. And so, experiencing those things, we decided to do something about it. And this is where it goes to not only planting but uprooting. When you see things that need to change, having the courage to actually try to uproot those things and not just leaving them as they were. So we started a awareness campaign called the I2M Princeton campaign. If you actually Google I2M Princeton, our Tumblr page is still up there. It was done in solidarity with other students across the country, from Oxford to Harvard. There were I2 campaigns happening everywhere. It was based off the Langston Hughes poem, I Too Sing America. And it was basically asserting we belong on our campuses too. And we would hold up photos demonstrating some of the instances of racism that we experienced on campus. And I remember we actually printed out those pictures and put them up around campus, and we were encouraged during an Admitted Students Weekend not to do it. But we were like, we have to be honest about what you're getting into when you come here. We can't only show people the flowers, we have to show them the weeds too. At the same time, we're also willing to have those conversations to let them know that we're not willing to leave things how they are here. And that is where we were at. We were not just exposing things, but we were actively brainstorming what can Princeton do to better serve minoritized students and students of color. We came up with different ideas, like the fact that African American Studies should be a major. At the time, it was only a minor, even though they had the best professors, the best classes. It was the most popular certificate program, but it was only a certificate program. We talked about how there should be more rigorous processes for responding to instances of racism on campus. And you name it, we came up with a whole list. And I would love to say that we immediately marched that list into the president's office. But it was around April or May, finals hit. I can't speak for what happened next. I think we just all got buried in our papers and everything like that. And that document had to sit in my laptop until a more opportune time. But a more opportune time came, because I was a freshman in the spring of 2014, and it was in the summer of 2014 that Michael Brown was killed by Ferguson police officers in Missouri. I was here doing a summer internship called the PICS Internships in Civic Service in Chicago when it happened, and other students were all across the country. But when Mike Brown was killed and his body was left in the street for 4 hours, a wave of grief passed over the Black community nationwide, and me and my classmates were no exception. We immediately started reaching out to each other, trying to think about what could we do to respond to this grave injustice that was happening yet again to another member of our community. And when we got back to campus my sophomore fall, we held a vigil in honor of those people who had fallen to police brutality. We invited, various different student groups and representatives. The gospel choir, we sang. Some Jewish students offered prayers. It was a multiracial, multi-religious, just a diverse expression of solidarity with our community. We held a town hall to see what would happen, whether Darren Wilson would be invited for murdering Mike Brown. And we all sat together in Wig Cleo Hall when our first Black president announced to us that he wouldn't be indicted. And by the way, don't use this as an excuse for violence, because we're looking for an excuse to be violent in this country. It was incredibly disappointing, and I can hardly describe the heaviness and the sadness and the rage that filled that room at the time. Our professor, Eddie Glaude, was there with us, and he spoke to us. My friend Malachi was there, and he erupted into spontaneous spoken word, and we just cried and held each other. But at the end of that moment, one of my friends, Anaida, said, "So what are we going to do about it?" And we decided to all go back to our dorms, change into Black, and go to the Frist Campus Center to make signs and go protest on the street. It was the Monday before Thanksgiving break, which is affectionately known as Drinksgiving by Princeton students, where students go out and get drunk because we don't have anything else to do. Well, not me, everybody else. Go out and get drunk because they don't have anything else to do before we leave for Thanksgiving break. And we shut that down. We protested on Prospect Street. We held a Black Lives Matter protest, and some students mocked us and others joined us, but in either way, our voices were heard, and that was the beginning of a movement on campus. We later organized a campus-wide walkout and die-in at Frisk Campus Center, where approximately 500 students participated. To our understanding, that was one of the largest protests that Princeton had seen in perhaps decades, though I don't want to say that definitively because I don't want to erase any organizing that happened that I don't know about before we did that. But all I know is it was a very quiet, sheltered campus, and that was a wake-up call. We were calling on Princeton to not be so comfortable in the orange bubble that you ignore the suffering and the injustices happening to members of our community across the country. And we also took that as an opportunity to challenge Princeton to not be ignorant to the suffering that was experienced by marginalized students on our very campus. So that's when those demands from the spring that got lost in the wave of finals came back, and we presented our demands to administration, our demands for an African American Studies department, for rigorous responses to racism on campus, for greater support for minority students, and the like. And we won those demands. Some task forces, some committees, some op-eds later. An African American Studies department was established at Princeton, and when I came back for my first reunion, I got to watch the first cohort of African American Studies majors graduate. A dean of diversity and inclusion was appointed, who is continuing to make a positive impact on Princeton's campus to this day, Latanya Buck. There was more funding awarded for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives on campus. We also, the following year, protested Woodrow Wilson's name on our public policy school. And at the time, the university wouldn't budge, but to appease us for the moment, they did name buildings after Toni Morrison and Arthur Ashe, and they took down some of the murals of Woodrow Wilson on campus. And 5 years later, during the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020, they finally removed that racist name from our public policy school. And so no, it doesn't have the cute Woody Woo name anymore, but it's also not honoring and uplifting and memorializing the person who resegregated our federal government. So, I think it's a good trade-off. And so that experience organizing on Princeton's campus really showed me a microcosm of the type of work that I wanted to do in my career. I wanted to build community with people, and out of that space of genuine community, create safe spaces to learn about what people were dealing with. From learning about what people they're dealing with, advocate for the changes that need to happen, when the changes that need to be happen, be at the table as those changes are being implemented. And I'm so grateful that that's what I've been able to do as a member of the Coalition to End Money Bond and the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice here in Illinois. I'm so grateful that at this stage in my career that I've gotten to be a part of a legislative campaign to end the practice of jailing people before trial just because they can't pay a certain amount of money, a practice that has disproportionately ravaged Black and brown communities. And I know that as I prepare to apply to law school this fall, this is just the beginning of the change making that I'll have the privilege to be a part of, and I'm so excited to lock arms with other people who are passionate about justice and safety and equity in our communities to see the better future that we all believe in. And to the winners of the Princeton Prize, the certificate, the actual prize, I know that you're in that number, and I'm excited to be in this work with you. And so I just want to share a couple gems for your journey as you move forward. 1, choose your garden wisely. Look at the options that are before you. I'm sure you all got into great universities. I imagine you already made some of your choices. But choose where you want to go, where you will be able to soak in a lot and grow and learn what you want to learn in order to be equipped for the future that you want to build for yourself. Bloom where you were planted. Make sure that you are growing and pouring into yourself just as you are planting where you bloom. And pouring out your gifts and your talents and your wisdom and your passion into making the space that you're in better. But also assess the soil around you and adjust it as needed. For me, at times, I had to reassess the spaces that I was in doing organizing work. Even I was so proud to be a member of some of the organizing coalitions on campus, but at a time, I burnt out doing that work. And I realized that the organizing space was toxic for me. I didn't find it to be full of enough hope and mutual support among the people that were organizing, and I had to get out of there. And so as much as it would have been nice to be able to say I stayed in that group to the end, I had to choose me. And so that's another thing that I want to say is don't forget to water yourself too. You matter. It's not about it's about sacrificing, but it's not about becoming martyrs. And you want to make sure that you are being well while you're doing good. I experienced severe burnout at the end of last year after working on the campaign to end money bond, and I had to take an extended amount of time off work. And I am committed to start putting myself first, even while doing this work that I so deeply care about, and I hope that you will too. And lastly, just know that like flowers, your greatness will bloom in seasons. Flowers go through times to plant, times to harvest, times to rest, times to hibernate, and it's all worthy. It's all contributing to the larger goal. And so don't only see yourself as worthy or contributing to the future that you want when you are massively productive. You're also contributing to the future that you want when you're resting, because when we're talking about being our ancestors' wildest dreams, our ancestors did dream of rest. So just know that you can do it all, but not all at once, but you will do it. And I'm so excited to see the lovely blooms and flowers the lovely gardens that you produce and become. Thank you.
So say that again, bloom where.
Bloom where you are planted and plant where you bloom.
Bloom where you're planted and plant where you bloom. I love it. I love it. So we're almost at the end of our program. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, but we cannot have done this without Jason Tyler. Jason. So we're going to have Jason just come up and make a couple of remarks. We just appreciate the fact that he is so committed to having us here every year, and all that you see here today is made possible through his generosity. So thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Reggie. There's an adage in public speaking that you've got to be careful who you speak after. But I will tell you, I was thinking about it, there was no slot for me anywhere in the program this evening. So my job is really simple. First of all, is as much as you say it's because of me, Reggie, the amount of work you put into this for so long, we wouldn't be together today if not for you. And so thank you for Reggie. And then Irene and Brianna, and then all the reading and everything you guys have done to go through the very difficult task of selecting what we had today. Thank you for doing that. And I think this evening was really amazing because it gave us a chance to see the generations of what's happened and what this prize is all about. We saw people that we saw students that are just now at the beginning of their activism and what they're doing, what they've seen, and then we saw students that are a couple of years into it, past what they did, and they're in college or about to go, and you see that they're taking even more progressive steps. And then you see Brianna and everything that she's been able to accomplish, and it's just absolutely amazing. And it shows me that everybody that has spoken tonight has an opportunity they're going to see more in front of them. The challenges that you're going to accomplish, you haven't even seen yet. And every single one of these people, have gotten better and better. And I'd love to see what you're all accomplishing in 10 years. But as much as this is a celebration of what you've done, and you came thinking that you were nervous about what to explain that you've accomplished, for the people in the room that are my friends who've been around, we come to this because it teaches us about what it means to be an activist. And it reminds us that we have to observe things and fight for what's right. And the fact that that's coming from people who are in their teens or in their 20s, it just puts that much more pressure on people like me who see wrong every day and have to continue to push against these things as well. And so thank you for that inspiration. I'm thrilled that we were able to, we do a lot of great things like this at Northern Trust, but this is the best night of the year to hear about the accomplishments of what you've done. So thank you for that. With that, Reggie, I'm going to turn it back over to you and to close us out, but thank you all for being here and for teaching us so much. Thank you.
So the closing remarks, I am going to ask Marquise to do the closing remarks, and then I'm going to ask everyone after Marquise does these closing remarks for, would like to do some group pictures, so don't run out too quick. We can get some group pictures, and so that was really directed toward Jason.
Hello, everyone. So I didn't know I was going to be speaking. I would have dressed better. Like, I really thought I was going to sit in the back. I would have worn a suit, especially if I knew that was going to be after Jason. So, Reggie, thank you for the invite to pinch it. You know, I think some of y'all know I was the Chicago chair for the Princeton Prize for a lot of years. And as I walked in the door tonight, it hit me that this is the first in-person prize reception since COVID. The last one was the last one that I organized, and it was also here. Not in this room, it was in, I think, the room over there. But, you know, I want to give a shout out to Jason, who has been a friend of the Princeton Prize for, I think this might be the 5th one that you've done. And Jason has always been a supporter of the prize. And I also want to give a shout out to Edie, who is somewhere in the back. Edie had to do 2 or 3 of these virtually. And it hit, you know, COVID hit right in the middle of when I handed it off to her in her first year and did it brilliantly. And then to Reggie and Renee, who couldn't make it tonight, this is great. Like, y'all carried the torch for the last year or two, and this is wonderful. And also to Brianna for the keynote. That you really got me thinking back to the 90s, back when I was at Princeton. It's a different place. And to the students, you know, congratulations. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I guess I'd say to all of you, you know, it's the work that these students do. It's not like anybody's getting paid for it. You know, people do it because they see a problem. They say, hey, I can come up with a solution. And then you hope and pray that people will follow along. And for the 4 folks that spoke tonight, people followed along. I was on the committee, read the applications, and it's amazing how strong these applications get year after year after year. And I just continue to be impressed by these folks. So, you know, on behalf of the National Princeton Prize Board, 'cause I'm on that now, and also the Princeton Club of Chicago, thank you all for coming out, and have a good night. Cool.